Each video here. I'm going to start off with a date. Here we go. Come on, Happy Boy. His name's Happy. Okay. Welcome. This is November 26th, 2025. It's good to have Bruce McDonald back. We did a whole series of videos back in 2020. We got a playlist link below. Bruce is a technical writer. He's got a degree in journalism. He's a Canadian living in Costa Rica. So, Bruce, great to have you back. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Brian. It's nice to sit down with you after such a number of years.
Yeah, we did a series in 2020, then we came back around 2022 or 2023. And
Hmm.
yeah, let's go back to our talks on the light of darkness back in 2020 and pick up on those themes. I mean, that's a very popular series of videos. You got like tens of thousands of hits on those. Those are very good. So, yeah, where would you
Oh,
like to begin
wonderful.
there?
Well, let's speak to people who maybe have not seen them. So,
Yes.
in 2020, I I told the story of a man named Robert Wiegand, very interesting fellow. And that story was captured in a book called The Light of Darkness, A Warrior's Tale for Our Time. And it said things about the world and the psychomaterial control of the world. I don't say spiritual, it's more of a psychic thing. And stated a lot of things which at the time might have seemed outrageous, but with 6 years passing, so many of the things that I predicted are coming true. And I'm not predicting the future the way somebody who is using remote viewing or anything like that would predict the future. I was just became aware of energy currents and cultural energy currents and thought forms in our reality, which at that time were still in seed form, but now they've started to bloom. We're all co-creators in this reality. But when people contemplate that idea, it's been my experience, Brian, that people generally contemplate it from the perspective of self-service. So when they contemplate the law of manifestation, they think, well, what can I get out of this? How can I satiate my material desires with this consciousness power of manifestation? Which, of course, is a negative way to think about it. Manifestation, or the relationship between human consciousness and the hologram we live in, is ongoing 24/7. And it's both our conscious and unconscious minds that are co creating the reality. Most of this takes place on the astral plane, which is where we we monumentalize or memorialize our desires. So when you think of any desire you have, if you have an eating disorder, you'll find that food is in your consciousness a lot, right? So that's just one relatively simple example. But what we fail to contemplate is how collective belief systems enshrined in religions aid in the co-creation of this reality. And so one of the things I talk about in the light of darkness is what we call the Abrahamic belief system, which encompasses three major religions and numerous sects within each of those religions. So the foundation is Judaism with many sects. You've got many sects of Hasidism, which is Orthodox. You've got the dominant socio-political force in Judaism now, which is Chabad Lubavitch. Then you go over to the Christian world, and you have a relatively monolithic Vatican experience until about 500 years ago. And then we get the Protestant movement, which is splintered into many, many forms. The newest and most prolific being evangelicism. But in its original split, it was mainly the Lutherans and the Presbyterians and the Church of England, the Anglicans. And then we move up to the the Islamic system, and they've got the Sunni and the Shia, which are divided over questions of lineage related to the ancestry or the descendants of Muhammad and various other forms about how to pray. But generally, we have these three Abrahamic systems. And people internalize them as children through the cultural process. And if you don't understand what you're doing when you internalize a belief system, you become an unconscious co-creator in a plan that you don't really understand. And so coming to understand this through my meditative process and further understanding it by having my co-writer in the light of darkness explain magic to me, which was a missing piece in my understanding, specifically blood magic. He was a practitioner and initiate of Palo Mayombe, which is blood magic, like Santeria, like voodoo, like many of the African religions, which is essentially commiseration with the low astral. So if you have energy deficiencies after death, meaning that you didn't have a good life and you didn't have a good death, you'll kind of hang around close to the physical plane and you'll crave all the things that you craved while you were alive. Those memories persist in you as a kind of haunting and torment. The Chinese have an expression for this. They call them hungry ghosts. Very, very wise, the Chinese in their system as well. And
Yeah.
it's possible for human beings to enter into trading relationships with these spirits. They're not all dead human beings. Some of them are more powerful than that. You can ritually communicate with the reptilians through blood magic. And with this understanding of co-creation and consciousness and the understanding of magic, I realized that everything that the human race was doing in the Western world, which is still dominant despite the rise of China and its economic prowess, but China has its own problems now. We can talk about that a little later. Inevitably, what would happen was that there would be a tremendous push for the construction of the Temple of Solomon, which is, of course, a magical edifice constructed in a ritualistic and magical way, commencing with a very specific animal sacrifice, a perfect red heifer, the bloodletting of the heifer, and the subsequent burning of the heifer to complete ash, like a cremation. And this, by the way, for those people who don't understand, this is the true definition of a Holocaust. Okay, the Holocaust is a ritual. It's a burnt offering. And so if we attribute the capability of a Holocaust to the German National Socialist Party, we are simultaneously admitting that they were operating as rabbis because rabbis are the only ones who understand the Holocaust process. And the Holocaust has been used as a tremendous source of energy harvesting from human beings through guilt and sympathy. And that energy harvesting has been a magical working for the production and the construction of the Third Temple of Solomon, which is very close now. Now, the Arab world knows this. The Islamic world is not laissez-faire about their religion. And the imams and the scholars within the Islamic world are quite erudite. It is my belief that the October 7th attack on Israel by Hamas was provoked by the realization in the Islamic world that the rabbis, and specifically Chabad Lubavitch, which is the Messianic sect within Judaism, wanted to build the third temple, which of course would necessitate the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is, I think, the third holiest site in Islam. The designation of holy site to the Al-Aqsa Mosque is a bit specious in the sense that Muhammad never visited there. And they say he did, but he didn't because it was built after his death. Nonetheless, the Al-Aqsa Mosque persists there as a kind of an energetic seal on the extremely negative energy of the temple site, which was used for all of the Jewish bloodletting, and at the time of Solomon sat right beside a temple to Moloch, which was allowed to be built because one of Solomon's mistresses convinced him to do it. So that kind of ritual and that kind of sacrifice leaves a residual energy. And the particular geographic location of the temple is also a heightened energy center and a portal. So they want to recapture that energy. The Jewish world wants to recapture that energy. And the Islamic world does not want to let them. So we have this conflict now, which is given to us in our news media in a completely fallacious and incorrect way, because the news media is secular and they can't explain the phenomenon of conflict there the way I'm explaining it today. So belief systems which become enshrined in a human being but not spiritually validated. So you and I meditate. I believe and you believe that if we continue to meditate, we will purify ourselves and our consciousness will rise up and see what Buddha saw, see the devas, see the other realms. And this is all proven true in my meditative experience over 4 decades. I've seen these realms, they're real. And so the Dharma, or the consecration of the belief in outcome through a spiritual process like ours, transmutes belief to reality. The Abrahamic system does not, unless violence is brought about to transform the socio-political situation of the world, which is exactly what's going on now. Now, I want to say, as I explain these things, there really is no contempt in my heart for the rabbinical orders that want to make this happen. They're just operating on a belief system. They're trying to fulfill the wishes of what must be about 100 generations of Jewish lineage now going back to Solomon. So like many people, they want to honor their ancestors and they want to fulfill their biblical prophecies. So this is what's going on in the world now. We spoke about this at length. You know, I've gone back at times and looked at some of those interviews and in the last year, and it just amazes me how accurate they've turned out to be. So the end times really represent the transition from one collective belief system to another. And like most change on this planet, they will come about by violence. Most change comes about by violence. Okay, so if you're an alcoholic, before you go into any form of treatment, any form of 12-step program, you're going to hit rock bottom, which is a form of violence upon self, right? So there's one small example, but generally all major change in the world comes through violence, okay? And we are going to go into the sort of epitome of violence now. And it's going to be, I think, quite severe. I think significant numbers of the human population will be killed, although I don't see death as a tremendously negative thing. We pick bodies up and we let bodies go, right? Of course, while in the body, we have a tremendous desire to keep living. I have it. Everybody has it. So I don't begrudge people their fear or their apprehension about the times that we're going to go through. And there's a negative and a positive to this. So generally, the negative entities on the planet, entities could be organizations of human beings, they have a sense of what the creator wants to do, what the currents of life want to do. And what they generally do is they mimic it. Okay, so the negative agenda will mimic the natural transition that the positive agenda has, which is one layer of this, one of the inner circles, but the circles go out quite a bit cyclically. But one of the rather simple explanations is the transition from Pisces to Aquarius, which, as I understand it, it's not an immediate thing. It takes about 300 years to finish a transition from one
Oh, I
cycle
didn't
to
know that.
another.
Oh, I didn't know it's like 300 years.
Yeah, yeah. Now, the astrology and what we call the clock approach to reality is all true. Astrology is all true. There's varying expressions of it. I myself don't study astrology, but I acknowledge it. I think overt time put into it is not spiritually productive and will create an occult mindset which favors aggrandization of self over dissolution of self, which aggrandizes power over love and violence over submission to the divine, or I call it the divine. I know there's no God in Buddhism, but it's very hard to speak about these things without referencing a point like the creator or God.
Or
And
some people
it's
call it
all,
source in the UFO community. People like to call it source. So I accept that too.
yeah, source is one definition of it for sure. So this is how I see the world now, some 6 years after we first interviewed for The Light of Darkness. And it's absolutely fascinating, you know. I see it as fascinating. But at a deeper level, even before my mind was conscious of it, I knew it was going on as soul at my base perception. And so I set myself up over here. I moved to Costa Rica and I built a home. And I moved to a very rural part of Costa Rica that people don't accidentally wander into. You wouldn't be able to find me unless you knew exactly where the road was going up the mountain. You'd have to be told. It would be almost impossible to find me. And then I'm about 7 kilometers, 7.5 kilometers up the road, and I go up to about 420-meter elevation. So it's a bit cooler up here. And then I border this magnificent natural biosphere called the Talamanca Mountains, which is a source of tremendous energy and renewal and peace. And so I sit here and I watch the world unfold, and I'm relatively certain, although you can't be 100% certain, I'm relatively certain that I'll be safe here through the transition. But I find it sometimes, Brian, very psychologically harrowing just to watch it through media on my computer, you know. And a lot's changed since we last spoke. So Starlink finally got around to offering its service up here about 3 years ago.
Yeah, better
So I
sound
got,
now. I noticed that. That's good.
yeah, and I got good microphones and I switched all my computing to Macs, when Mac went to the M class chip. They're so strong and they're so powerful that I switched everything to Mac. And and so I can get a lot more work done. I don't have to worry about bad internet connection when I'm doing client meetings and I'm interviewing engineers for my grant writing and stuff. So, and I'm still married to Rosemary. We'll probably die together. And I have my family up here.
That's good. That's good.
I'm finishing up a new house I built. Not an earthbag house. I built a traditional Costa Rican concrete house, like, and it's a big house. It's about 1,000 square feet on the inside, 4 bedrooms. Should be
Nice.
done by about should be done by about Christmas, and that's for people to come up and stay with me for weeks or even a couple months at a time. And it's also for a tourism business that my son and I want to do, providing the world will be interested in tourism over the next 7 years. I don't know.
I think so. You mean like an Airbnb kind of thing? That would be nice.
Well, they would just be spending one night at the house, and then the following morning, the main tourism business is hiking into the jungle and visiting
Yeah.
the Kebakar natives.
Well, that'd be
And then
cool.
we're gonna offer various hikes of you know, beginning with just a day trip to the reserve. So if you walk casually, it's about 2 hours to get up there and 2 hours back. And then we're going to have overnights at the reserve. And then for the more adventurous people, we're going to do 2, 3, and 4 day hikes straight through the jungle, where you start here and you end up in another part of Costa Rica when you come out of the jungle. And those are all going to be guided by
That's
the
cool.
natives.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
cool. Yeah.
there's my opening salvo. You have any questions?
Wow. Yeah, I'm just wondering what's next for the world. I remember like when we first started in 2020, we didn't have the Ukraine war then or the conflict in Gaza. I guess you probably see this as all part of the same thing. I like your whole thesis that since around the mid 1650s, out of the city of London, the reptilians were were accepting this feeding that they were being given by the elites to feed them energy. So it was an economic exchange. I've always thought that was true. That was a really good hypothesis about what they're going on with this energy exchange with the reptilians. You want to comment more on that? And also, since the wars we've got.
Well, another thing that has grown or changed quite dramatically since last we spoke is the UFO narrative. It's exploding now.
Yeah, I just
Now,
saw
what the
Age of Disclosure came out on Friday. Yeah, that
Mhm.
documentary. Yeah, it's great. Congress talking about it. It's really exploding now. That's of course my focus.
Yeah. So this is a long and cumulative process that really begins at the end of World War II. So, not a lot of people know, probably the most um, visibly, because there's always people who never come to be known by the public, right? But in terms of visible and known personalities, probably one of, if not the most influential person of the 20th century was Henry Kissinger. So Henry Kissinger, even at the age of 22, was Army intelligence for the United States during World War II. And he was one of the first people into the secret weapons bases built inside of mountains by the National Socialists. And it was probably Henry Kissinger who set up Majestic 12.
Oh wow, wow.
And the revelations that came about as a result of what the Germans discovered scientifically. Now, remember, you have to go back, and it's hard for people to remember things. There's this one of the principal habits of this human race is forgetting.
That's for sure. And
We,
they count on us to forget.
yeah, we forget things, right? So, but for most of history around the time of the Bank of England, we have this other incredible phenomenon in Germany, and we get the printing press through Gutenberg, we get the Bible, we start to get books. The 17th century or the 1800s is the century of philosophy. We get all of those extraordinary German philosophers, Hegel, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche. The Germans really dominated everything. And so, what the Germans achieved in the early 20th century, especially between World War I and World War II, in some measure the result of their occult collaboration with other non-human life forms through the Vril Society, the Thule Society.
Yeah.
You see, mankind's first contact with extraterrestrials is through consciousness. Have you ever been visited
Yeah.
by an extraterrestrial race while meditating?
Well, yeah, I do channeling practice, so I feel like I kind of try to focus in on the mantids and the grays. Actually, right on my shrine by the Buddha, I got a mantid and a gray statue. So sometimes I feel like I'm succeeding in channeling. So I kind of feel like I'm walking in their footsteps or doing their work on Earth. You know, I kind of following them. So I definitely feel some connection to the mantids and the grays.
Okay. Generally speaking, mankind's first encounter with extraterrestrials in the modern era. Now, in the past, um, they used to appear and interact with human beings. Many of the native traditions will go back to star people. We know this.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this forces us to ask a question, though, doesn't it, Brian? Why is there not open extraterrestrial contact in the modern age? Why why would they be more interested in interacting with people whose highest technology is fire than the modern human race? And for me, the answer at present, I leave myself open to evolution and changing my opinion, but at present, my answer to that question is that we have become too dangerous.
Yeah, I agree with
Okay?
that. We're not really worthy of full disclosure because we use energy, free energy. You use it to militarize it, you use it to attack others, use it for war or for profit, that kind of thing. So I think disclosure's up to the ETs, and they're not showing themselves.
Yeah. And I think they're going to wait until after we go through this chaos, after we clean up our collective consciousness.
Yeah,
So
I
that
agree.
this transition to Aquarius and the Abrahamic system is a very astral system. It doesn't go the consciousness of the Abrahamic system does not really go beyond the astral. That's why they don't talk about reincarnation. Although Chabad Lubavitch is starting to talk about it.
Yeah, I
Their
think
their
some
rabbi.
Muslim sects talk about it too. Yeah, in Islam.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's
So,
true. That's reality. Some sense it. I read a
yeah.
survey that 37% of Catholics believe in previous lives, even though it's a heresy in the Catholic Church. They just intuitively sense that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um we have the habit in our collectively, we have the habit in our present state of consciousness of regarding life in a linear way. So a straight line from point A to point B, demarcated by time and distance, which are aspects of this hologram we live in, right? But the truth is, life and existence is more circular. It's a never-ending circle. And so this is why the Buddhists say, you want to achieve a state of perception where you're liberated from the wheel of karma. And so they conjure the image of a wheel, which is endless and continuous repetitions, tedious repetitions.
Yeah, it's not going
And
anywhere, just going in circles, but it's not really going. It could be pleasant, but you're not really going anywhere with rebirth
yeah,
process.
yeah. And so we get on we step out of these circles by changing our behavior. No matter what we do, when we break a cycle, we have to break that cycle by stepping out of the circle. So the alcoholic is, well, I can't drink anymore because this happens, this the same thing repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats. And repetition and tedium are the great spiritual lessons in this dimension.
Yeah, yeah,
And to liberate yourself from these things, you have to take up the Dharma path. You have to take up a liberation path. And one of the things that is going to come about in this transition we're going through is these Abrahamic systems are going to be wiped out because they don't serve us anymore, and we've
yeah.
outgrown them.
Yeah, I
They're
think
not a
that's an
turn.
ET perception that we have to open up humanity's minds, and it's kind of preventing spiritual growth, the Abrahamic systems. I think from an ET perspective, that's what they're thinking. They have to open it up. And like since the mid 1800s, like spiritualism began to kind of challenge Christian thinking in the West. It gave them an alternative. So I think, yeah, that's the issue that's maybe hard to discuss, that the Abraham religions have got to be kind of phased out, or could they be transformed within, like the Catholic Church, they accept extraterrestrials more since the year 2000. They say, we can't limit God's creation. Extraterrestrials could be our brothers and sisters. So they're a bit more open to that idea.
Yeah, the Vatican's been quite vocal about that actually, and and so we're going into a new age, and that this transition is going to be violent, and so the best thing that you could do for yourself, if you have the means and if you have the ability and if you have the opportunity, would be to set yourself apart. You've got to get out of the systems that they've created, the monetary system that is documented at its commencement in the light of darkness, which has been the principal weapon and tool to move the human race to this point where we're at now, which is the construction of the third temple of Solomon. Now, not everything going on in this world is done in ignorance or is done in an unconscious consecration to a belief system that hasn't been realized, which was my earlier definition of the Abrahamic system, which is very forgiving. The inner circles of these systems transcend what the public doctrine is and get more into the underbelly of reality. And this is generally represented in all the schools which have had access to the teachings of the Kabbalah, whether they be secret societies in the Gentile world, like the Rosicrucians, like the Masons, like many of them. And a lot of the newer religions are involved in this as well. They're of Masonic, which is of a Kabbalistic origin. So these religions were begun by Masons, and therefore they're Kabbalistic, they're Jewish.
Does that
And here
mean the
we
New
can,
Age as well? The whole New Age movement, same thing?
well, I'll get to that in a moment, but the religions that come to mind which fit the mold I've just described are Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormonism. Those are all Masonic constructions.
Yeah,
Okay,
they are. Yeah.
so they're derived from the Abrahamic control system and then tweaked to be more relevant in the 20th and 21st century. And through this tweaking or tuning of them into a new form, they become more in tune with the dynamism of the changes we're going through. And unevolved people interpret that as wisdom, but it's really just control. The New Age system is representative of the religion they want to go forward, which I don't think will survive. The problem with the New Age is it substitutes the mind for the heart. And no path that does not begin in the heart and the purification of the heart will have any success. And so a lot of these New Age systems can produce, they can produce results, experiential results, you know, and I would throw the plant medicine into this as well, the ibogaine, the mushrooms, the ayahuasca, that whole Joe Rogan crowd, plant medicine, plant medicine, plant medicine. But multidimensional experiences before you're ready for them, and becoming ready for them means purifying the heart. And so, in a sense, the Christians are right. I grudgingly give them that. If you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Christ is giving us the best heart teachings that we can be given. And these heart teachings have to be mastered before our consciousness can go any higher. Otherwise, we become very, very dangerous, right? And so you look at something like, did you happen to see Christopher Nolan's last movie, Oppenheimer?
Yes, I saw Oppenheimer. Yeah.
Isn't it interesting that all of those physicists were Jewish,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
And they think, let's make a bomb out of this. Yeah.
Yeah, and that one of my theses is that the Kabbalistic system is the root of this idea of transferring knowledge for heart. And they become very powerful. And with that power, without the purified heart balancing it so that you're in submission to the divine current, you incidentally become a sorcerer or a black magician, whether you realize it or not. And this is one of the reasons there's just so much darkness in the world now, whether you look at the child trafficking, child ritual sacrifice, sex trafficking, all of these things. They're a result of this group of people who think they're above it all and say, oh, well, nothing really matters. We reincarnate and, I can do this. And yeah, you can do it if you're willing to pay the price, because the lords of karma are the most unforgiving creditors in the universe.
It's
And
a law. Yeah.
and all debts must be paid, and there's interest on debt as well. This is where we get the banking system. It's human beings pretending that they're agents of stability, and they're not. So the banking system is a mimicking of the causal fabric of this reality, which comes from the dimension above the astral, where time is controlled. So this is the pickle we're in now. And to go into the new epoch, all of the unmanifested debris in the collective human astral has to be manifested and gone through. And so that's what we're doing now. And that's why it's so chaotic, because the loan has come due. This is one of the aspects of these turnings in the astrological system, is that before you go to the new system, you have to pay the debt on the old system. And these are our thoughts, our feelings, everything that has been imbalanced in relation to the heart. And so, that's what we're going through. They seem to think that they're going to be able to maintain or even amplify their control system through the emerging digital reality, which is growing faster than weeds in a garden. And this is manifesting as digital money, digital identification, and all of these sorts of things. Whether it succeeds or not, I'm not sure. I would say it will probably succeed for a short period of time, and then the human race will just sort of shuck it off. you know. And then a lot of times you can dispel theories that are a little bit ridiculous. Okay. So there's a lot of people out there now, podcasting and such, who want us to believe that we're going into this new digital prison. There's another group of people who believe a pole shift is coming. Well, I would trust the wisdom and the insight of the Kabbalistic circles. And so they would not be investing all of this time and energy into a digital system predicated on an electrical framework that functions if we were going to go into a pole shift, because it would all be rendered null and void very
That,
quickly.
that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah.
So why would they be doing that if they're occult scientists and they're seers and they're remote viewers? We're telling them that there's a pole shift coming. So I think you can throw the pole shift out the window,
Yeah. I'm not too
right?
worried about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess what I'm optimistic about, I think that there's higher level ETs, at the highest levels, like the mantids that are bringing in, like through the process of rebirth, like these star kids, and they'll take over a leadership role in the future, maybe counteract the whole negative process in the world. Like there's these three waves of souls coming in, or star seed kids, and they'll be the leaders of the future. Because we're in kind of a Kali Yuga, maybe they'll counteract this. So the ET intervention happens like through humanity. It's sort of behind the scenes of them taking rebirth as humans. So that gives me some still optimism for the future. Although there could be a culling of the Earth's population beforehand. There could be things could get worse before they get better, like you described.
Yeah, so when you look at the projections, the numbers that they've been giving habitually, whether it be the Georgia Guidestones, which were destroyed, or other sources of information, they all focus on this number of a population of 500 million. Have you
Okay.
figured out what that is?
Well, I've always seen that number. Yeah, and destroying the Georgia Guidestones isn't going to help. I mean, yeah, I don't know where it comes from. Out of 8 billion, so they want half a billion. Where does it come from? I don't know. Like,
Well,
when did it originate
if you
too?
go
I wonder.
back, if you go back to the Bible, in the book of Revelation, there's this number of people given of 144,000. And those would probably be Jews. Okay. Now, if you listen to the Jewish end time eschatology in the world to come, each Jew will have 2,800 slaves.
Yeah, I
So
counted it up once. That's a lot.
yeah. So multiply 144,000 by 2,800 and you'll come up with your half a billion.
Oh, that's where it comes from. Because I multiplied 16 million current Jews times that. Would be way too many. I didn't think about the
Yeah. So
144,000. Thanks.
yeah, so this is something that the chosen people haven't figured out is most of them are going to be wiped out as well. So
Yeah,
we
they're going to
can't
keep
just
Goy slaves.
yeah. So we can't just say that this is a Jewish conspiracy because if there's 15 or 20 million Jews on the planet now, and the number is going down to 144,000, that means that like 99% of the Jews are going to be wiped out as well.
And there could be a lot more Jews than they're telling us. They said even at the end of World War II, there's 16 million. So maybe there's more than they're telling us about. Yeah, so you're right.
Well, I've always found the Jewish population to be a curious thing. And one has to wonder how a people who've been around documented speaking a language for 3,000 years that we know of, and they say longer, 6,000, but 3,000 years that we know of, how these people could have such a small population in the 21st century. Okay? So it's been extremely selective breeding, right? Because every other population, if you go back 2,000 years, I will ask my Gemini AI for the answer to this 1 second.
Sure, sure.
And then we can understand some of the theories on population.
Yeah.
What was the population of China 2,000 years ago?
Wow, I don't know. See, right now, if it's 1.4 billion or a bit less, maybe it was 100 million or less than that.
Uh, I don't think so. They say that at the time of Christ, the population of the world was only 250 million.
Oh, so China might have been about 30 million or something.
Yeah. Yeah, but generally, populations grow quite a bit, right?
Yeah, they
Um,
should. Yeah.
yeah. So it's a relatively curious thing, the declared Jewish population. So based on census records from the Han Dynasty, the population of China 2,000 years ago, roughly 25 AD, is estimated to have been approximately 60 million.
16 million. Okay.
Yep. So in 2 AD, the Han Dynasty conducted one of the most accurate censuses of the ancient world, and it recorded a population of 59,594,978 people. So they've
Is that
grown
where in the
immensely.
world? In the world or in China?
In well, I don't the Chinese hadn't gone out into the world back
Yeah.
then.
So that they're saying 59 million in China.
So let me ask the next question here. What was the population of the United Kingdom of Israel at its population height? Oh,
16. Oh, no, I'd say 7 million. If there's 16 million in the world, maybe 7 million in Israel.
yeah. So just let me just ask again. What was the population of the United Kingdom of Israel at the height of its population? So this will be interesting, right? Because we can see how the Chinese have grown, we can see how the Japanese have grown, up to a population of about 90 million. We can see the Germans.
You know, white
They're
people are about a billion in the world. There's more white people now than ever before, even though we're down from 30% to 8% of the world's population. We've still grown.
we're only 8% of the population.
Yeah, I think we dropped from 30, like beginning in 1900, we were about 30%. Now we're down to about 8%. And yet still it's
Mm,
about a billion.
are you sure about that?
No, maybe it's more than 8% then, if it's a billion. No, must be 1/8, which would be more like 15%, I guess.
So most historians and archaeologists estimate the population of the United Kingdom of Israel under King David and King Solomon, circa 1000 BCE, was roughly 70,000 to 100,000 people. So we're going another 1,000 years behind and they say that the answer depends entirely on whether you rely on the biblical narrative or modern archaeological estimates, as the two sources differ by millions of people.
Well, I don't believe the biblical narrative. I don't regard that as history. It's more stories, I think.
Yeah. So the Bible offers a census in 2 Samuel 24:9, which counts the valiant men who drew sword, and the count was 800,000 warriors for Israel and 500,000 for Judah. So total population, if these 1.3 million were just the fighting age men, the total population, including women, children, and the elderly, would have been approximately 4 to 5 million people. But I mean, it begs the question, where are they all? I mean, even if we go with the low estimate of 100,000 people, the Jewish population has not grown in proportion. Now,
Yeah. So you think they're hiding
the,
them somewhere that they're not counting them honestly?
honestly, Brian, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't given it any thought. It just popped into my head while doing this podcast. So if they're being hidden, they're being hidden. But the present population of 15 million or 20 million globally seems incredibly small.
Yeah.
And another curious thing that's going on is there's a baby boom in the Orthodox now. So you're seeing Israeli Orthodox women now breeding like 19th century Catholics, right? Like having a dozen kids. And so this is all in line with, I guess, what would be their prophecy, that they're going to be prolific in the world. Of course, it's all erroneous. It's all nonsense. And as I've said before on your show, I think prophecy in and of itself is a malignant form of spiritual practice. I think it's doesn't align properly with the heart. And for
Yeah,
the
it's
one
not
thing,
good
it
for the rest of the world. Yeah.
yeah, for one thing, it entrains people to incorporate the future into the present. And to be spiritually balanced, you want to be just living in the moment you're in.
I agree. Yeah.
So it's a curious thing.
It's a form
I,
of
of
greed,
course,
these prophecies, the greed for their culture.
I, I think really the Abrahamic system is a form of occult warfare, right?
Yeah, good line.
They're
Yeah.
all three systems are extremely self-centered. Like if you're not with us, you're damned.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't accept Christ, you're damned. Only the Jews will be saved. And then the Muslims think that if you don't move to Islam, you're not going to be saved. And so that chauvinism comes out of the occult technology of the scriptures, which is extremely disturbing.
It
And
is. And they don't
and
get along with each other.
yeah, and counterproductive to spiritual growth. And so there's really nothing positive to say about it at this moment in history. And
Yeah.
I think they're single-handedly responsible for the rise in atheism or the rise in spirit. The people who've consciously chosen to disregard all spiritual inquiry, which I think is a completely unlived life.
Yeah, I think that happened
And
with the Middle Ages, with science took a misstep with the religion because of that. And that was the rise of atheism. Yeah. I think had Buddhism
yeah,
dominated the world of science and religion couldn't have gotten along better together.
yeah. So wherever you want to go in this conversation, I will say that at some point, I would not mind talking about Canada.
Yeah, let's talk about Canada. Yeah, I
So
mean,
you're there.
yeah.
Tell me what you think about what's going on in Canada.
Well, what I've done over the last year, or a bit less, is I've kind of detached from the daily news, and as I just glanced at it on the internet, I think it's just all kind of a globalist Rothschild shell game, like the war in Ukraine that goes on and on. They try to talk peace and it doesn't. So I kind of just don't pay that much attention to even national politics or even global politics. I think it's all controlled by the globalists. And it goes back to what you said years ago. They're trying to get us to feel fearful or anxiety or worry so they can feed off of that. So I think Canada is just all part of that. I mean, I wanted the Conservatives to win. I didn't like the fact that Trump put on these tariffs and then Mark Carney got elected as prime minister because they thought they had to rally around the prime minister for some reason. I don't know why. So I'm not happy with the Liberal government. I would prefer the PC government. I just think they're better for the economy in Canada. Um,
I was, that's interesting. However, I was referring more to the lived experience of Canada and the lived experience of Vancouver. Is the homeless population rising?
Well, yeah, I still see the homeless in the street. Yeah. And there's lots of immigration, like lots of East Indian immigration. They dominate, like all the Amazon drivers are East Indian or taxi drivers or Subway restaurants, a lot of East Indian immigration. So when I get on the bus, sometimes there's only two or three white people on the entire bus. So I definitely feel like I'm in a minority. So we have our little, like my friends are mainly white, so I hang out with different meetup groups that are predominantly white. So we each have our own little, like most races, each hang out together. So I'm okay where I live in East Van. I mean, it's okay where I live, but there's lots of immigration. It's very noticeable in the big cities like Vancouver. And I first came here
Hmm.
in 1980 when it was predominantly white. So there's really been an influx of immigration. So there's been some
Yeah.
white flight from the city.
So what do the Chinese think about the East Indian influx?
Well, I think they don't like them as much. I guess the Chinese are perhaps a bit more orderly or law abiding or intelligent, hardworking type people. I guess they have a bit better reputation than the Chinese. Although the
Okay.
crime's not too bad in the Vancouver area, there's not too much violent crime. It's not that bad. There's not too much strife between the different races.
Okay. What about what about the legalized drug zones where you can shoot up on the street? Are they getting bigger or are they keeping them contained?
I guess no. I
Have you
guess
ever
there's
walked through one?
yeah, like the downtown east side. Sometimes there's needles in the street. Yeah, sometimes you see needles. I guess it's. I don't think it's contained. I still think there's lots of drugs and fentanyl has been a real problem. Yeah, they're not really solving the problem. I don't think here. Yeah, you see addicts in the street, and also crystal meth. You can really see it in people's faces as people on crystal meth. I guess they get this feeling of love from the drug. Maybe people had a troubled childhood, didn't have enough love, so they get that feeling from the drug, so they become very loyal to it. So I kind of feel sorry for these addicts on crystal meth. But yeah,
Yeah.
even on Commercial Drive in East Van and other places, you see drug addicts, definitely. Like near the SkyTrain stations, you see drug addicts.
Well, there's a rumor going around and a lot of news coverage outside of Canada that it has become a major hub of organized crime, especially the Port of Vancouver, and that it's so endemic now that the major threat of fentanyl inside the United States is no longer the southern border, it's the northern border with Canada.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I've certainly heard that as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Do you feel that there's any sort of anti-white sentiment or expression in the Canadian government, in Mark Carney,
Oh yeah, definitely. There's anti-white policies, and particularly like there's all this emphasis on the Native Indians here in Vancouver. They really have rights to the land that we should give up all of our property to the Native Indians. There's a lot of discussion on that in the media, like here in Richmond, Canada. There's even disputes over home ownership, whether it should go back to the Native Indians or not. So this is a terrible land grab. I mean, it's like communism. And of course, I don't think
yeah.
the Indians are behind this. Yeah, there's
Who do you
anti-white
think
sentiment definitely within the government.
who do you think is behind it then?
Well, I'd say the globalists are definitely behind this. It's like a form of communism. They're just trying to take away private property from all Canadians and using the Native Indian population as agents for that kind of
Yeah.
communist grab, I guess.
So do you think that the World Economic Forum model is communism?
I wonder about that. Like I've always thought of it as a negative thing, but I think from a extraterrestrial perspective, there could be good EDs and bad EDs involved. Like there could be this negative reptilian perspective that wants to dominate and subjugate all of humanity, but there could be good ETs that want a globalist society as well for a better world. So it's confusing. You have to discern which parts of it are bad and which parts of it are good.
Well, I again, going back to our Hebrew friends, I think the negative aspect of communism that most people find repugnant is its stamping out of religious and spiritual culture,
Yeah, that's
right?
fair. That's
Whether it
fair.
be the Chinese attack on Tibet or the Bolshevik attack on Christianity, and the many murders. And it's a very, very anti-religious culture. And of course, this comes from Karl Marx. And it also, I think, if you look at it and understand its proper context, I think it's very much related to the Jewish desire to exterminate all religions but theirs, which is what's leading. This is part of their prophetic dispatch, right? Which that the all idolatry will be terminated, which will be mass executions. I mean, if they get their way and they get Noahide law
Or
and
you
rule
should
from Jerusalem.
take off your glasses. You look multicolored.
Well, I wear them because they block the blue light from the screen.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah,
okay. If you need
they're
it, that's fine.
yeah. So the idea of a Jerusalem-led world under Noahide law is what Chabad is saying. And this is what the Mashiach is going to bring about.
Yeah, but I
And
think at the ETs, if the mantis succeed, like with these Starseed kids coming in, they definitely want a more spiritually oriented society, like a telepathic society with quantum dimensional consciousness. The change would be almost like from gorilla to human, like the new human would be totally transformed, and Homo sapiens sapiens would be phased out. So maybe the World Economic Forum wants to bring out something like that from a higher ET perspective. So there's these two forces kind of fighting it out, I think. Um,
yeah,
yeah, so like it seems good and evil are side by side in the world. That's always playing themselves out, good and evil. That's why I try to be optimistic for the future. So that's why it's mysterious.
yeah.
I'd have to see with the World Economic Forum if there might actually be something good to it.
Hmm. That's a very benign interpretation. Um, you know, I think that we need to own certain things. We need to feel secure in our home. I think it's a natural principle. If you doubt the principle, stick your hand in a badger hole sometime and see what happens. That's the
Yeah,
badger. That's the
yeah.
go into a cave where a bear is with its cubs. You will be immediately repelled, and the animal will defend that territory as its own. So even in the natural world, they don't own it in terms of title. A badger hole is not registered in the land registry. But this basic human idea of having a place to call your own that is inviolate and cannot be invaded by the king is, I think, a proper reflection of spiritual law. So, how they're going to get around that and change this natural mechanism in human beings, which is connected to our biological nature and our biological consciousness, it's a very difficult task. I mean,
I think maybe it'll be telepathy. It's probably gradually, we're probably going to gradually develop to a telepathic society. So then there'll be more of a shared kind of purpose or more of a shared communal kind of feeling. I think the gray aliens, they're like a communal type society. They're telepathic. So it's something very different. If we had a human society like that, maybe that's where it's actually going towards in the future. This could be over generations or a century or more. It could take a long time. I think the ETs, they take hundreds of years to make changes.
Yeah, yeah, they're not in any rush, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
However, I don't see them within the same sort of salvation perspective that you do. We've always had this schism in our perspectives, and I could give you some examples to underscore what I'm saying. So we have certain attributes in the human consciousness that I don't really see in the extraterrestrial cultures, like beauty, appreciation of beauty, music, all of these things. When you read about these extraterrestrial races, they seem to live in a very taciturn way. There's no consciousness of hygiene. They're very ugly. I don't mean to be judgmental, but I mean the Greys are, from a human perspective, are a very ugly species. They don't have the range of feeling we do, and this range of feeling we have when the heart is mastered allows for all of these things you're talking about, the constructive telepathy, and the ability to connect with the spiritus mundi, the collective unconscious, and the ability to go to other worlds, and the ability to have freedom and have the flow of divine energy through you. I haven't seen any examples of extraterrestrial races that really have that. In many ways, Brian, I think despite the technological deficit, I think as a spiritual construct, I think that the human being is in many ways far more advanced than many of these extraterrestrial races,
Well,
you know?
I think the mantis is the most evolved. People describe them as very wise and very loving, like vast minds. And I think the Greys also they have positive emotions. It's just that there's no expression on their face because everything's telepathic. But people who have established long-term telepathic relationships, they have just really wholesome emotions from the Greys, and that the mantids are
Okay.
quite wise, and they can even send thought packets into people's subconscious minds, which come out later as realizations or inventions. So I think they have a higher spiritual dimension about them, and they're also in higher dimensions. But there's
Okay.
negative press about the ETs, like could even be by the negative media or by the reptilians competing with the ETs. So it's different.
Well,
There's probably about 10,000 cases of people, actual experiencers, who report this. So some database of their experiencers that's been published.
hmm hmm So the hybridization program is still going on.
Yeah, I think that's what largely a big part of what this is all about. They're gradually phasing out Homo sapiens sapiens and bringing in new hybrids. And I don't think it's something that can be found in a DNA test. Um, but also we have DNA that's so-called like junk DNA. But some people craft this describe it being activated by light or by harmony. There's even I think there is music I think in the higher realms as well, but the DNA gets activated. So hybridization may be some. It's very largely about the DNA. I think the ETs have created our DNA and they're upgrading our DNA now.
Yeah. Um, I just received a message. I don't mean to cut this short, but I think I have to go.
Okay, well, this has been a good talk. It's been over an hour. Really appreciate it, Bruce. It's great getting together with you and
Yeah,
getting.
we can catch up like on a monthly basis and just have a 1 hour conversation
We
if you
should,
want.
yeah, we should meet each month. I can give you a call and send you an email. I'll send it on Teams. Sure,
Okay.
this
Can
has been
you
good.
can you send me the download to the Zoom recording so I can put it up on my Substack?
Oh yeah, yeah. Do you want just the raw recording? Because I'll edit it as well.
Yeah, just the raw recording is
Yeah, yeah. I'll
fine. Yeah.
send it to you, and I'll send you a link once it's published as well, and you can post it, of course. Sure.
Okay, so the final thought that I'm going to leave people with is the most important thing going on in your life right now is your own self-cultivation. Whatever is calling to you, okay? You have to start going within yourself, understanding your own mind, understanding what the human is as a non-physical entity, occupying the body, and grow. This is the most important thing. The rest is just almost meaningless if you don't have an inwardly directed life. So that's my final and most positive thought.
And I agree with you completely. Good last words, Bruce. Thank you kindly. We'll be in touch.
Bye, Brian.
Bye now.